Let's get into it. This was being talked about preseason as one of the biggest, best games of the year, and it seems that this is going to be the prequel to a possible Big Ten championship sequel. Yet to be determined. We'll see. But it's a possibility. Ohio State travels out to Eugene to play the Oregon Ducks. For me, there's a couple key points. Similar when we talked about the Iowa game, there's a couple key points in this game for me. Do you want to just kind of give general thoughts first, or you want to just dive into it?
Yeah, you know what? Here's the thing. So I think a lot of this, the basically the build up to this game has lost a lot by Ohio State not playing a very tough schedule and Oregon really looking bad against Idaho.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and Oregon not just looking bad against Idaho, like Oregon looking bad against like some other teams and opponents and stuff like that. Like, I mean, are we really to the point where I don't know that we're to the point of where I can like be like, hey, by the way, great win by Oregon, 31-10 over Michigan State. Like, I don't know if you got to watch it on Friday night, but it just didn't like. It never felt like they imposed their will on Michigan State. And yeah, it was 21-0 at half, but it was like, cool. Like the only reason that it's 21-0 is because, let's be honest here, Michigan State just honestly, Michigan State played a great game against us. They did not play a great game against Oregon, and Oregon just didn't look that impressive, if that makes sense. So I mean, you had the 10-point win against Idaho. Should have definitely lost to Boise, and then they went out and they impressed against Oregon State, which I thought they would struggle because Oregon State and Boise, I felt like are kind of on the similar stage as far as like what they like to do on offense. And I felt like their defense, both Boise and Oregon State, are not that great. So that's why Oregon put up a lot of points. But I don't know. I get this sense that the build up to this game and the hype around this game, it's 2 versus 3. But to me, it just doesn't feel like a 2 versus 3. I feel like Oregon is only at 3 because everyone else keeps losing.
Yeah.
Like they were what, 8 a few weeks ago? And now they bumped all the way up to 3, but you've also had Alabama shockingly lose. You had Tennessee shockingly lose. You had Ole Miss shockingly lose. Like
Michigan not shockingly loses.
Yeah, I mean, and I mean, I think Michigan and Oregon were like right there, like the same preseason wise, 8 or 9. Like you had Georgia also lose. Like Oregon has literally only moved up because, like us, I get that we're up there and we haven't played anybody, but they also really like they play Boise. That's cool, but Boise doesn't strike the fear into me. UCLA, Michigan State, like that's our common opponent. And I don't know if you saw, but the line going into the Michigan State game was 20.5.
Mm-hmm.
And, or no, it was 21.5. My bad. 21.5. And certain Michigan State team decided they were going to kick a field goal down 31-7 to cover the spread by a half point. And a lot of people in Vegas were not too happy about that.
Yeah, not surprising.
I just want to know how much Michigan State's coach had on the game for them to cover, but that's beside the point. But no, we can break it down however you want. We can go offense, we can versus defense, we can do that kind of stuff. But overall, like, if we show up and can play 3/4 of this game, I think we win this game because I'm just not that impressed by the Oregon Ducks.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I think Oregon's been shaky for sure. I think they've kind of found their footing as of late a little bit better, not what we thought they would be. But I want to take it offensively first for Ohio State, and I'll just tell you my keys to the game and tell me what you think.
Okay.
So for me, I think we have to come out and we got to establish the run. Oregon gave up 192 yards, 3 touchdowns to Ashton Genty, which I know he's a freak of nature and one of a kind and is going to be probably a really good back in the National Football League. But here's the reality. We have two of those guys. And even if Genty's better than both of them, Trevion Henderson and Quinshaw Judkins can both do together similarly at least what Genty did. And, for Oregon, they got a good front. They got a good defensive front. They can get after it. And I think Ohio State has to come out and establish the line of scrimmage. They have to come out and pound the rock. And that includes Will Howard. Will Howard has got to use his legs. Against Iowa, 10 carries, 28 yards, and a touchdown. We've seen him kind of take off and be mobile. I think in order for Ohio State to establish a deep downfield passing game, which if we can do that, we can really blow this open, and it's not going to be competitive. But the only way that we're going to do that is establishing the run game, because Oregon allows 5.3 yards per pass. That's top 5 in college football. So I think for Ohio State, and especially just because we've started so sluggishly offensively, just come out and run the ball. Come out, Chip Kelly, establish yourself, establish the run game, and then start to open things up. If Ohio State can do that, then I don't think this game is going to be particularly close. But if we come out and we try to mix things up and we try to get things going in the pass game, I don't see that going well. I think Will Howard, we've had the last 2 weeks, 2 dumb turnovers. And, I'm not putting all the blame on him, and I'm not saying that he's not a good enough quarterback, because he absolutely is. I think he's more than just a guy, which I think a lot of people have that mindset of Will Howard is just a dude back there with the talent around him. I think he's talented himself. I think he's got to come out in this game and really take control as far as being the leader. Can't turn the ball over, because Oregon is a team who can take advantage of those turnovers. I mean, you play Michigan State, okay, they're not really a threat. If you turn the ball over, they're not going to march downfield and score on you. But you turn the ball over to Oregon, give them a chance, and especially, like you mentioned, get back into the game. If you give them a chance to march on back and gain some momentum, because they're at home. That's another factor, too. Ohio State's playing on the road.
So, first big road test we're going to face, it's has an actual, very decent, crazy nuts environment. Now, Michigan State was loud to begin with, but then it was kind of okay, well, we're just happy to be on the same field with you guys. And plus, there was a ton of Buckeye fans there. I don't know that there's going to be a ton of Buckeye fans. Ticket prices are super expensive. It's super hard to get out there. There's not really a good airport to get there. Trust me, I looked. Closest airport is Portland.
Wow, really?
Yes. I mean, the major airport to get there. You have to fly to Portland, and then you have to probably rent a car. Or you do have to rent a car. So one thing that I'll look at, since we're doing our offensive side of the ball against their defense, they do give up a lot of rushing yards, and they did early on. Now, granted, they've gotten better. So I think the key to the game is kind of do what you did against Iowa in the second half, where you limited the possession time for Iowa and the amount of plays by keeping your offense out on the field and controlling the game. You ran the ball well. You passed the ball well. You did the RPOs well. You did a lot of good stuff that really fit to wear down their defense. But you need to do that in the first half. And I think that's my key to the game is let's keep our defense fresh. I need a lot of 10 to 15 play drives for scores. Even if you don't get a touchdown, at least get a field goal on every single one of your drives. I don't want to see any punts. That's going to be the main thing. The key for me is no punts in the first half. Let's put together solid drives. Let's control this clock. Even if you kick 3 field goals in the first half and a touchdown and you have 16 points on the board, that is going to be more than enough to kind of make Oregon a little nervous, because when we jump to the other side of the ball and talk about it, Um, there's a lot I have to say about our defense against their offense. A lot, actually.
Yeah. Um, I'm ready to shift to the defense, so
Okay.
I'll give you. Oh, go ahead.
So I was going to say I'm not as worried about their offense, especially after seeing them against Michigan State.
Hmm.
They do not worry me. They do not scare me. Um, Dylan Gabriel had 2 red zone picks.
Yeah.
2. Um, that's a him problem, and that's been a him problem for a while. Like, I think that's a reason why, like, he struggled at Oklahoma. He had red zone picks. Um, Look, I've never been a big believer in him. I just don't think that he's. I want to say, I mean, look, he played a lot of games last year, and look, he threw 30 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, but it seemed like when he needed to come up with a big game for Oklahoma, he never followed through. It never worked out. It never happened for him. Perfect example. I want to say his best defense he faced last year was Kansas, and they lost at Kansas in a pretty tough environment, but he also threw no touchdowns in that game. So, and he threw for under 200 yards. He's going to face a similar defense this week. So, am I that worried? Not to be honest, I'm not that worried about it. The other thing is he does have some legs on him sometimes to where he can scramble, he can move, he can run. I'm not worried about that to that certain extent either because he's still a very much a pocket passing quarterback overall. Um, the one thing is Jordan James, pretty good running back for them.
Mm-hmm.
But once again, I think Caleb Johnson is better. I think Iowa's offensive line is better than Oregon's offensive line, and you're going to see that. And I think we shut Jordan James down. I mean, he has 3 games over 100 yards, and I'm pretty sure he went nuts against Michigan State last week. I could be wrong, but I really honestly think that we kind of I think we hold him under 100 yards. I think and that's the key to the game. I think get him under 100 yards. Yeah, he had 166 last week. Excuse me. Keep him under 100 yards. Um, but there, I mean, he is their bell cow running back. I mean, he's getting 24, 25 carries every single week. I mean, look, it's one of those things where they're trying to keep him under 20, but like the past 2 weeks in the Big Ten games, they have
Mm-hmm.
literally given him the ball over 20 times, both times. Um, it's just one of those things. Like you have to contain him. He's not a real good receiving back, so that's one good thing. Like he's not coming out of the backfield, things like that. And to be honest with you, I don't know. Like their wide receivers, they don't impress me. Um, I mean, their top wide receiver is Tez Johnson. Look, doesn't really move the needle for me, to be honest. I mean, does he move the needle for you that much?
So okay, my thing, and I agree with you 100%
Yeah,
in the run game. Um, he's their guy 100%, and I don't think it's so much similar to like Iowa where it's like okay, if you stop him, all the problems are solved. I
yeah,
like what they have in the pass game. I think Tez Johnson is he's not what I thought he would be this past or so far this season. I thought after last year Tez Johnson was going to be the dude, but they
mhm,
also had a lot more talent on that team. A
yeah,
lot of talent left for the NFL. Um, but and they got another receiver there that's really good. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but um, to me, I think if you can stop the run game and really put the ball in the hands of Dylan Gabriel, you mentioned it. He's got turnovers, and he is more than prone to turn that ball over.
yeah,
And I think if you can kind of shut down their the fire almost, if you can kind of put a
yeah.
put some water on that flame early on and really hinder them offensively, I think that's just going to open up so much more. Because if you get in a situation where they have to pass the ball, right? If
Yep.
defensively you can shut down the run game and they have to start airing it out, I think that 100% favors Ohio State. We've done a great job in pass coverage as far as second halves of games, so we can do it. It's just going to be a matter of how do we look coming out early on, and that's the biggest thing for me defensively. You have to start this game ready to go. We can't have any of this shit of waiting around, looking sluggish, playing too far off. Like, we have to come out and be ready to go.
One thing that I do want to state here, they do run a lot of switching their tight ends or two tight end sets. Terrence Ferguson and Kenyon Sadiq, dude, they're going down the middle of the seam and they're catching 10, 15-yard passes from Gabriel.
Ferguson's a dog.
Yes. So that's the thing. Like, that's one thing that I don't think we've seen. And I'll say this. We did see it this past week a little bit because, I mean, Iowa utilizes their tight ends and stuff like that. And look, I get it. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I know it's Iowa. I know they have no passing offense. Like, let's not get too crazy about it. But Luke Lachey was our leading receiver with 5 receptions for 39 yards. He's their tight end, number 1 in Iowa. Like, we shut him down. He was having, I mean, the dude is kind of a beast. And let's be realistically honest here. He's had some great stellar games against other opponents. I mean, and he's had some poor games against other opponents, but it's like he's their main target on that Iowa offense. So
he's an Iowa tight end. I mean,
yes,
they
exactly.
turn him out. It's
yeah. So that's the thing. I think we did well in covering that. So it wasn't that much of a concern. But I'm going to tell you what. The other thing is, I don't know about you, but there's definitely one thing to be said here, by the way. And this is kind of like something that not enough, maybe we don't pay attention to it enough, things like that. I do know this, that Oregon has had, I believe, 2 blocked extra points this year. So that might kind of pan into something. And I'm pretty sure that I think their field goal kicker, he's pretty solid, but he's had 2 extra points blocked this year. So I don't know if we should like look into that, but if this game gets down to the nitty gritty and you're missing extra points, that could be the difference between us. Yeah. Like I said, it's going to be a tough game to go on the road. I think we come out of here with a close win. I think it's going to be, I think, in my opinion, like a 31-24 type of game.
Okay.
And here's the thing, by the way, let me rephrase this. They are going to score a garbage time touchdown with like a minute left to make it 31-24. I think we are well within handling this. It's going to be 31-17. I think we handle our business. I think the first half is very much a chess match, and it's going to be like maybe like 10-7 at halftime. And then I think we kind of catch fire in the second half.
Yeah, I think a lot of this game is a battle of who can put up points first. And, if you're Oregon, you really want to take advantage of your home crowd. And if you can offensively come out and really, like, if you can do something and put this Ohio State team in a position to where we have to play from behind, which we haven't done all year and we won't do for the majority of the year. If you can put Ohio State in a position to where they have to come out and they have to find a way to move the ball downfield in kind of a tougher circumstance, then that home crowd can really become a factor. And we know Oregon is a tough environment. That's a really tough place to play. And like I mentioned, given the fact that Oregon has a good defensive front, we've seen this Ohio State offensive line play really well for what we thought it was going to be. And for me personally, I don't have really any worries going up against a better defensive front in Oregon. But the question for me is more so, how are you defensively for us? How are you going to come out and really handle this? Are we going to come out and play aggressive defensively, or are we going to come out and kind of be what we've been somewhat throughout this year and just start off really, really soft and keep everything in front of us and let them kind of take the chunk plays, the 10, 15-yard plays, and not let anything deep? I want to know, what is this going to look like? And I've mentioned it every podcast we've done. Every time we've talked about this team, I've mentioned the linebackers.
Yep.
I'm fascinated in seeing how we use the linebackers in this game, because we talked about the run game, but also when you have a guy in a Sonny Styles, you have Arvell Reese, you have Simon, we have this group of guys. I think you got to get creative. I think you got to disguise a lot of blitzes. I think you got to really get Dylan Gabriel on his toes and get him kind of out of it early on. And I think if we can do that, then the game's over. But it's just a matter of how this starts. It's a matter of how it starts. Coming out of the second half, we know we're going to be A-okay. But how are we going to start? How do we start this game? That's what I want to know. And we're going to find out, and it's going to be a fun one. What time is this game?
7:30 on Saturday.
Okay, so yeah,
Yes.
This isn't. Jeez.
Yeah, well, you got to remember out there it's only going to be 4:30.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
it will be partially played in with the sun up and partially at night. So
Sundown.
and college game days there. So
Yeah. I mean, this game is going to be fascinating. It's going to be fascinating to see where this Ohio State team is at.
this is our first real test, and I mean, if you blow them out of the water, then you're going to have everybody in the country talking. Everybody in the country is going to be, whoa, like, and look, I love that, and I don't like it at the same time, because I kind of feel like right now everyone's like, Ohio State hasn't played anybody, so who cares? And I like that a lot better. But time will tell.
Time will tell. I think, given what we've seen in college football, I think we've seen there's a lot of frauds.
Yeah.
There's a lot of teams that aren't who they say they are.
One thing I just want to touch on, we saw something that we may never see in our lifetime again. We saw Vanderbilt beat Alabama this week.
Yeah.
And we may never see Vanderbilt beat Alabama again in the history of our lifetimes. And I'm not saying we're dying in the next 2 years or something like that. Like, they hadn't beat Alabama since 1984.
Yeah, that's insane.
I know they didn't play every year, but I will say this. Next year's spread should be 45, and I might still take Alabama, because they are going to run the score up so hardcore on Vandy. But I will say this, whoever was in that stadium that night, you probably honestly witnessed history. You saw Lane Kiffin doing a post-game press conference and literally stopped his post-game press conference and was like, sorry, I can't answer your question right now. I'm watching Vanderbilt beat Alabama, which we'll never see in our lifetime. I'm almost guaranteeing we may never see that in our lifetime again, because Vanderbilt just doesn't care about sports, their academics, and that's it. I mean, they care about baseball, but outside of that, they do not really care. Should never beat Bama, but
it's crazy because you were 65 when they beat them last time?
Yes, exactly.
So, but all right. Well, do you have anything else to add before we?
Other than that, go Bucks.
Go Buckeyes. Glad there's one team in Ohio we can be proud of. We'll go back to being sad as soon as I hit this end recording button. Goodbye, everybody.
Have a good one. I-O.